This is something I want to talk to you about for your own protection as a home buyer. And it's basically this concept that buying a brand new home and buying an existing home are processes that are significantly different. I point this out because not everybody knows this, and in a lot of ways they're very similar too, but there are a few things that make them very different, and a few things that, if you're not aware of them, can be potential pitfalls for a home buyer when it relates to new construction. So a lot of the time, you might not be aware of these going into the process. You may not even be aware of them during the process. Buying a new home is different in that you also don't need a real estate agent as much as you do buying an existing home. You don't need a real estate agent at all. You can do either of these things on your own. Anybody can whenever they want. It's much easier for a home buyer to walk into a new home community sales office for a national builder in an area where they're actively building and say, hey, I want to see some homes. The builder's rep will show you the homes. If you want to buy one, they will help you through the purchase process. Having a buyer's agent on your side never really gets brought up. And this happens all the time, every day. And for that reason, I want to mention those things here. So if you're someone that is about to enter into that situation, at least you'll be armed with this information that hopefully can be helpful. Of course, if you've watched this channel before, I am a Denver-based real estate agent. So if you'd like to have a conversation about buying a home, be it existing, new, my partners and I at the Alchemy Group would love to have that conversation with you. So I've always thought that there's kind of two types of people. There's new home people and there's existing home people. And yes, there's obviously some crossover. Some folks have bought both, but typically a new home person to me is someone who wants everything to be new, everything to be nice, everything to work, right? This is a brand new home that's just been built. Everything should and usually does work properly. Okay with being much closer to your neighbors because a lot of the time that's what happens. You're okay to buy into a community that might not be finished yet. And you don't want to deal with the quirks and the problems, honestly, of an old home. And then an existing home person is someone who doesn't care so much about everything being bright and new and shiny, but wants to be in one of those more established neighborhoods, is okay with the quirks, and a lot of the time actually likes those quirks, likes the charm of an older home, and wants to know the secrets of the universe, which in an old home often can be revealed. But say you're a new home person, okay, what do you need to watch out for? Really, what are the potential pitfalls entering into the process? So I got three basic things to watch out for, and they're all going to be kind of centered around this idea that the process is different. A lot of the time buying a new home, especially if you're buying from a national builder, it's going to be on a builder-specific contract. It's going to be on a contract that builder's attorneys have drawn up. This is different for buying an existing home because an existing home here in Colorado, we use state-approved Colorado Real Estate Commission forms. They're all one thing. You kind of know what you're getting. A builder contract can vary and does by builder. So three potential pitfalls to watch out for. And the last one is one that's specific to our local market here in the Denver metro and something that I'm seeing more and more as a potential challenge down the road buying a new home. But number one, most of the time when you're dealing with a big national builder, which is many of these new build communities, that deposit you put down after signing the contract will be non-refundable. This is a huge, huge difference between the new home contracts and an existing home contract. In an existing home, using those state-approved forms, we call it earnest money or deposit. Same thing, basically. Your earnest money, you put down a few days, typically after you sign the contract on the home. That earnest money throughout the process between contract and closing is refundable. There are all these contingencies in this existing home contract that you, as the buyer, have your sole subjective discretion to decide whether or not you want to move forward with this purchase or you want to terminate. And if you terminate on any of these contingencies, as long as you do it in a timely fashion by the dates and deadlines that the contracts allow, you are able to get your earnest money refunded. These contingencies, they're inspection, they are appraisal, there are other loan contingencies, there are HOA documents review contingencies. If you're in an HOA, there's a whole bunch of them. Colorado state real estate contracts are written in a very, very buyer-friendly way. It's actually very hard to forfeit your earnest money in an existing home contract unless somebody really screws something up. But in a builder contract, and again, this will vary by builder, but the vast majority of them have that deposit go non-refundable as soon as it hits the builder's bank account. That money is theirs, whether you close on this home or not. Now, if there are challenges that arise within the process with inspection, with having to move dates, with any of these other things, hopefully a good builder will work with you on that and not just say, nope, sorry, we're not going to close, we're keeping your deposit. Many of them will, depending on the situation. Some won't, and they hold all the cards. that money is theirs if they want to keep it. Number two, the lender incentives that many builders will offer you can often be bait and switch. Bait and switch is it's an extreme term, but let's say they can often be not what they seem. So again, for a lot of new build communities, especially when the market's slower, like it is right now in the Denver metro, builders will offer incentives in order to get buyers in the door, buyers in these homes. The majority of the time, those incentives will be tied to using the builder's preferred lender, which is almost always business that's affiliated with that builder itself. So if it's, Lennar, if that's the lender, just using Lennar as an example. And honestly, these incentives can be really, really good. It can be $5,000, $10,000, $20,000. I've seen up to $40,000 back at closing for using this preferred lender. Sounds great, right? That money can be used for a whole bunch of different things. Sometimes they take part of it and just do a price reduction. A lot of the time, especially right now, those incentives, that money is applied to the loan balance to buy down that loan. So to do a temporary or permanent buy down to make the interest rate better, especially with a high interest rate environment like we have, that can be very, very enticing. And if you're getting one of those bigger incentives, $20,000, $30,000, something like that, usually that is actually good. Usually that is going to be a net benefit to you. But keep in mind, these lenders are working, or let's just say affiliated with the builder. They're also working with you because you're now their client. But when they're giving you money to help you buy down your interest rate or offset your closing costs, there can be other fees that are higher elsewhere in the contract. There can be loan origination fees that are much higher than they would be with a typical lender. That interest rate that you're buying down may be and can be significantly higher than it would be on the open market. So not always, but I have seen situations as someone who's helped people buy new builds where they give you some here, but they take some back here. And there's no real way to understand what's happening unless you're looking over those loan docs like you and your agent should be. So please make sure that that's happening. Another good thing to do, honestly, because many times when people go to buy a new build, a new home, they have a previously established relationship with another lender, right? That's part of the process. Once you start home hunting, you want to get pre-approved. Well, the reality is, even if you have that relationship, when you go in and they start dangling these concessions, these buyer incentives for using their lender, usually you're going to. I mean, it's just human nature. I'd do it too. But especially if you've already been pre-approved with this other lender, ask this other lender to go through the process with you concurrently so you can compare what you're getting on those two loans. That way, at least you'll know if what you're getting is actually a better deal. Okay, number three, and this is probably the most involved of the topics I'm talking about today, so just bear with me because I do think it's the most important, at least to our local market right now. And this is a factor I call midterm resale value, because buying in a new build community, especially one where they're actively still building, can have a dramatic effect on your resale value for the foreseeable future. Now, real estate, not supposed to be a short-term investment, right? So buying a home and then having to sell it in 2 years, most often you are not going to be making a lot of money. You might be breaking even. You might be losing a lot of money. It's a long-term investment. That's the idea. If you bought in 2019 and sold in 2021, you made money. God bless you. You hit it right. Usually, though, those market dynamics are not present. In a normal market, you want to be looking 7, 10 years down the road, even more. That's when real estate as an investment really starts to pay off. But reality strikes, right? There are times where you may buy and then 4 or 5 years down the road, even 3 years down the road, life change, job change, move in states, any of these things can happen. And now you're in the position of having to sell your home. Not a great situation for anybody, at least in terms of return on your investment, right? Even if you buy in an existing established neighborhood in, South Park Hill, you're not going to be making a whole lot of money unless you just hit one of those waves like we had in 2019. In an actively new building community, one like for in the Denver metro, Aurora Highlands, for example, where it's this big, huge new build community, very, very long lead time. They have started building, I believe they were building homes there, finishing them in 2019. It seems like they're going to be building forever. I mean, we're at least 10, 12 years out from the finish. When you ask, even the people who work there typically don't know when this project is actually going to be done. Multiple phases. And I've talked to people who bought homes specifically in the Aurora Highlands in maybe 2020, maybe 2021, who now are in the position of having to sell that home. Well, because The supply in this area, because real estate is local, so the supply in this micro market is constantly growing. That hurts the demand for your home. And oh, by the way, not just that, but you're also having to compete with the builders. So now your existing home that you've lived in for a few years is competing against new homes. And oh, by the way, those same builders are the ones offering those same incentives. Just taking this example, I have a odds of selling graph here. This is from Megan Eller's Market Reports, which I talk about a lot on this channel. This is broken down by zip code, okay? Basically, odds of selling means if you list a home, what are the odds it's going to go into contract in the first month? The zip codes are color coded, so orange or red means higher odds of selling. Yellow, greenish, blue means lower odds of selling. Up here in the right little quadrant here, the 23.7%, that's the Aurora Highlands. That's the community I'm talking about. It's going to take so long for, especially in a big new build community like this, for that supply to get seasoned, for the competitive environment, for anyone going to sell a home, normalizing. You're going to have to live there for the long term to reap the rewards of a typical appreciation scale. Another one down here in the bottom left at 23%, Sterling Ranch. Another home community where they've been building for a while. They are still actively building, opening up new phases. I've helped people buy in Sterling Ranch before. It's very nice down there. They actually love it. That is good. That is a sound investment so long as you're not having to leave in the first few years. And guys, obviously the reality is life happens, okay? You buy a house, you got to sell it 4 years, 5 years down the road. Do your best to cover your expenses and move on. Most people I talk to who wind up in these situations get that, right? You take the good with the bad. But if you are debating between areas and appreciation, especially over the midterm, 5 to 10 years, is important to you, it's a factor you need to be considering. And honestly, it's something where I would say it's probably worth looking at a more established neighborhood. As always, if there's anything I can do for you, let me know. Otherwise, love you. See you soon.